Well, welcome, Professor Bluestone, and thank you for agreeing to come with me or to join me today. You and I had a calendar snafu yesterday, but we're going to repair it today and just get a little information for you about the work that you've been doing for us. So we want to hear more about it.
Oh, yes, sure. Okay.
But
So,
first of all, just talk a little bit about who you are. I wanted to introduce you to the audience because you're the Associate Director of the Center for State and Local Finance and a Senior Resource Associate with the Fiscal Research Center at GSU Andrew Young School of Policy Studies. Did I get that right?
yes, you did.
That's what I pulled off of your website. So can you tell us a little bit, just for our audience, about your background and how you ended up at GSU?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I'm actually a Georgia State alumni. I got my PhD in economics way back in 2007 and worked closely with Dave Shoquist as a graduate student. And he was the director of the FRC at the time. That center was growing and they needed some more folks. And I was lucky enough to be able to land a position with the FRC back then as a research associate. The center has continued to grow and our workload continues to grow. We do the fiscal notes for the state legislature. We've also grown to start doing tax credit evaluations. Those are things you see, for instance, one of the famous ones is the film tax credit. And there's a Georgia job tax credit and several others. We also do some economic modeling. Some of that work we're doing with you all right now. We do work with local governments, annexation studies, cityhood studies, and we do some sales tax forecasting and other similar type of work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And so in our previous classes, this is a web series that we're doing, web seminar we're doing with the Georgia State University School of Law. You and I have talked, well, we have talked in those previous classes about a pilot project that we got started about 4 years ago. My colleague, Judge Tabitha Ponder, got a national grant to get this started. It's located in Daugherty County. It's called the Southwest Law Library and Legal Self-Help Center. It's also in Albany, Georgia, but it serves a lot of people outside of Albany. And we know from its existence that about 50 people a day show up seeking legal services of one kind or another. Sometimes it's as simple as filling out a form. Sometimes it's something much more complex and they have to refer out to a lawyer. But they try to do whatever they can to help people navigate the legal system. I approached you a while back about helping us to find a return on investment. We call it ROI for these sorts of services. And you agreed happily for me. I'm very happy that you agreed. Can you tell our audience why you said yes when I asked you to do this?
Sure, sure. So this is work. Actually, I think it started even earlier than this. We were working back in COVID times, looking at the potential impact that the changes to the eviction moratoriums might have, and the rules and the regulations that were in place then, and the economic impact that they might have. And so we, I think, started that dialogue then and worked a little bit on that. And this seemed like an outgrowth of that type of work. We do a lot of work that has looks into the impacts of economic impacts and state and local finance impacts that are generally around the Metro Atlanta area. So it's always we're always interested in looking at places to do work in other parts of the state, to help those folks, help policymakers with decision making, and get a better sense of the challenges that these people face, in their part of Georgia. And so this seemed like a very interesting work and a project that seemingly helped a lot of people.
Right. Thank you. So you're close to this ROI report, return on investment report for us. You and I talked yesterday, and we talked about the first week of January, and we will post that report when we get it. Once we have it all polished up, we were going to post it on this website as well as on this website of our classes, as well as our website for Georgia courts. As you know, we are seeking state funds to start a grant program of sorts to help set up legal self-help centers services around the state, mostly in places that have few lawyers. We're calling those legal deserts, which is a term that the ABA is using pretty frequently. So tell us about your initial results, where you are at right now.
Sure. So there are two types of ROI that we've focused on. The first is the return to the court system in terms of time saved. And the second is a little broader, but it looks in terms of legal benefits and future contingent benefits based on the successful outcome of the legal proceeding. And these are commonly referred to as the social returns to investment. So let me talk about the first estimate. And so this is looking at the time saved to the courts. And here we use the data that you all provided us, looking at the average wages for the people involved in the court system, for instance, the judge, the clerks, the bailiff, administrators, and so forth. And we also needed to have some estimate of the time saved. And so here we looked at various other studies that suggested that there's a range. Generally, they think of it in terms of sort of like a very short hearing, about a quarter of an hour. They estimate that these programs can save, and that's what we use. That's a fairly conservative estimate. So based on that data, the current findings suggest that an average value for the court system for the ROI is roughly $1.80. For every dollar spent, the court saves $1.80 in the time, and that helps in various ways. The courts are very overwhelmed, and so the more efficiently they can get through things, the more cases they can hear, and that helps people move on with their lives and things like that. But again, that's just a very direct impact to the court of the time savings. We looked at also some other assumptions of varying different amounts of time the court is in session, and a few other things. And so if you use some very conservative assumptions, that ROI goes down to $1.40. If you use some other more optimistic assumptions, that ROI can go up to $2.40. So there is a range, but that $1.80 is roughly the average, and that's in keeping with what other studies have found. The second aspect are the social returns, and they rely on data from other studies. It was beyond the scope of this study for us to try to look at the Georgia data and estimate the effects that individuals had going through this system. That would be a pretty difficult process, but it would be worthwhile in the future. So we look at that literature, and there's essentially several parts to again this analysis. The first part looks at the savings to the individual based on legal aid type fees. If they had to go get a legal aid lawyer or somebody like that, and so these aren't the market rate, but these are reduced based on need. So that's in the parlance of the social returns. Those are the direct effects. The second order effects are called the long-term effects. And these, again, are much more contingent on the outcome of the legal proceeding. In the instances of a family law case, for instance, you might have some additional support going to a spouse or minor children. In the terms of a consumer law issue, there could be a settlement in bankruptcy that saves the individual money. In the case of there's a federal housing law. Again, there are large benefits there in which a person now is entitled to federal benefits, and that can have a substantial impact on their finances. So we looked at the literature and came up with some conservative estimates, roughly of the value of these benefits, and we allocated them based on the number of cases that were seen, on average, in the Dougherty County Center. And so here we find that, for instance, annual benefits and again, this is for roughly half of the cases because they line up with those types of cases: the family law, consumer law, and the housing. And so we're seeing, again, conservative estimates about $2,500 to $3,000 in these contingent benefits. In terms of the direct benefits, we see, so let me start with the direct benefits. The direct benefits are the value of the legal services. Those are about $500 to $800 per case. And so if you look at those benefits and the number of cases, you get a social return of around 11, which suggests that for every dollar that's invested in this program, these individuals receive roughly $11 in benefits in terms of the cost, the value of the legal fees. If you look at the long-term benefits, these are what I discussed as the additional income potentially from the cases or financial benefits. Those estimates are roughly $2,500 to $3,000 annually. That ROI is substantial. That's a little, it's harder to pin down, but if you assume that range, that's a return on investment of $43. For every dollar that's invested in this system, an individual would be expected to experience long-term benefits of additional $43. So that's, and we would expect, those benefits are to be real. I mean, these people are going through a difficult time. They're in the court system to get a result, and that result is likely to have economic consequences for them. So there's essentially three levels of benefits. The most concrete is the court savings. The second one would be the value of the legal services. And then the third would be this long-term social benefit.
Great. So you may have already covered all this, but I'm going to ask it this question anyway, and we can just tell me if there's anything more. My next question was to ask you about what methodology or how did you begin to approach this analysis? You kind of covered that. Is there anything more to say to the audience about that?
The biggest thing, is this is sort of a future ask is, anytime we can generate Georgia specific data, that's going to be helpful, because we do rely on, and then these states are similar. Our neighbor Alabama has done some studies here. Another state that did some studies is Indiana. So we looked particularly at those states that had some actual valuations for the social returns. So anytime we can use a Georgia study, that would be great.
Okay, thank you so much. So you and I have talked about this before, but our judicial system is heavily county funded, unlike other states. Some states are more state funded. But we do have some state funds for salaries for judges. But the courthouses themselves and often the staff of the courthouses are county funded. So help me make an argument for why should we be asking the state for some state funding to help our citizens? And one of the things I wanted you to talk about was spillover effect, which you kind of explained to me once, and I thought that was a good explanation. It resonated with me.
Yeah, this is a common problem in economics when you're talking about smaller jurisdictions in which the cost of the service is incurred there, but the benefits of that service spill over into larger places, into jurisdictions that are greater than the county level. And so you have that issue here as well. For instance, you could have folks that live in Dougherty County that use this service in Dougherty County, but they may work in Lee County, the adjacent county. And anytime that they are not at work because they have to deal with this legal matter, that's a cost to Lee County. To the same side of that, the other side of that coin, and the more they're able to work, that's a benefit to Lee County. And so there's benefits there in terms of the spillovers to when you're thinking about employment. The other types of benefits, as we discussed earlier, these benefits will travel with people. If people secure federal housing dollars in one of these adjudications, and they move from Dougherty County, those benefits will flow with them to their new place of residence in Georgia. The same thing in family law. If they are given, if there's an adjudication that says that they have some type of support, they move from Dougherty County, that support goes with them. Bankruptcy as well. And so this additional income is flowing, is a direct result of the proceeding in Dougherty County, but then flows to other parts of the state as these people move. And so that's a benefit that the state enjoys. The flip side of that, if these people don't get those benefits, is that the state could potentially be on the hook for additional social services for these people, as they don't have means themselves they may fall into programs or require services that the state would end up providing. We don't examine that in this analysis, but that's clearly, you see that with lower income people who don't get assistance in one way, end up needing assistance in another way, in the state social safety net, and that again would cost the state money, likely more money than they would spend on this program, setting up these self-help centers.
Thank you so much. So we're coming to my last question, the end of our conversation. Is there anything else that you want to tell our audience, or for the record, as we wrap this up?
Very interesting work, and again, it seems like a very worthwhile program. A lot of a lot of return for not very much outlay, and again, and for people that are going through a really hard time. Anytime people need legal services, it's a tough thing for them. Again, as I mentioned earlier, though, any additional Georgia data that can be gathered would be helpful on several fronts, doing the work to see what the returns are, but also evaluating the program in the future, to see how it's going. So that would be one thing. If data is hard to come by, but if while this is ongoing, if you can make a note to try to collect that I think that would be helpful.
Great. Well, we thank you very much for your time, and we so look forward to your report.
All right. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Professor
Bye now.
Bluestone.